Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yasodhanandana Jaya Brajajanaranja Jaya Yasodhanandana Jaya Brajajanaranja Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunjabihari Jaya Kunjabihari Jaya Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunjabihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopichana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Gopichana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Sodana Jaya Brajajanara Jana Jaya Yasodana Dana Jaya Brajajanara Jana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Kunjabihari Jaya Kunjabihari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Kunjabihari Jaya Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Gunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Gunja Bihari Jai Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Oh, okay, so like I said, yeah, I think now we'll just take a quick commercial break. So I hope this will take less than 3 minutes. Sorry for the interruption. Kind of double booked myself this morning. Okay, I'll be back shortly. Okay, and we're back. Thank you. Sorry about that. Mm. S- So today, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, text number 27. It's 5:1:27. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so today's verse is in prose, so uh, yeah, wish me luck. Tasmin uhava upasammasila paramashraya sakala jivanika yavasya bhagavato vasudevasya pitanam sharana bhutasya shrimakcharana ravindati ritara Smarana vikalita parama bhakti yogano bhavena paribhavitantar hridayati gate bhagavati sarvesham bhutanam atma bhute pratyak atmanyavatmanas taratmyam avisena samiyu. Okay, word for word translation. Tasmin in that Paramahamsa ashram. You, Ru, I don't know how to pronounce that. It's just a U. Certainly, Ha, so celebrated. Va, indeed. Upasamasila, in the renounced order of life. Parama Rishaya, the great sages. Sakala, all. Jiva, living entities. Nikaya, in total. Avasasya, the residence. Bhagavata, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vasudevasya, Lord Vasudev. Itanam, of those afraid of material existence. Sharana Bhutasya, the one who is the only shelter. Srimat, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Charana Aravinda, the lotus feet. Avirata, constantly. Smarana, remembering. Avigalita, completely uncontaminated. Parama, supreme. Bhakti Yoga, of mystic devotional service. Anubhavena, by the prowess. Paribhavita, purified. Anta, within. Hridaya, the heart. Adhigate, perceived. Bhagavati, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarve Sham, of all. Bhutanam, living entities. Atmabhute, situated within the body. Pratyak, directly. Atmani, with the Supreme Soul. With the Supreme Super Soul. Eva, certainly. Atmana, of the Self. Ad atmyam, qualitative equality. Avisesena, without differences. Samiyu, realized. Okay, translation. Thus situated in the renounced order from the beginning of their lives, all three of them completely controlled the activities of their senses and thus became great saints. They concentrated their minds always upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the resting place of the totality of living entities, and who is therefore celebrated as Vasudev. Lord Vasudev is the only shelter of those who are actually afraid of material existence. By constantly thinking of his lotus feet, these three sons of Maharaj Priyavrata became advanced in pure devotional service. By the prowess of their devotional service, they could directly perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart, as the Supersoul, and realize that there was qualitatively no difference between themselves and him. Purport. The Paramahamsa stage is the topmost position in renounced life. In sannyas, the renounced order, there are 4 stages: Kutichak, Bahudak, Parivrajikachar, and Paramahamsa. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just chant a quick Mangalacharan, and then I'd like to just comment as we read. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Tadati Swapadantikam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so this is a very information packed translation and purport. And yeah, I think it warrants just kind of further unpacking of the translation and purport systematically. So in the translation, we have the first line: thus situated in the renounced order from the beginning of their lives, all 3 of them completely controlled the activities of their senses and thus became great saints. So this is just a nice kind of it gives credence, gives tribute to this idea of brahmachari and one learning how to control the senses from an early age. I remember, when I was young and I was traveling with my father at one point, and it was like his whole meditation was like how to just please my senses. And okay, it was nice, it's nice that every like fruit stand we go by and stuff, then he's like, oh, do you want some of this, do you want some of that? So I guess it was a nice gesture on his part that, okay, let me, try to please the senses of my son to the topmost extent. But yeah, it's in the long run, it's not beneficial because as many of us know who have studied psychology, those primitive years are very impactful in terms of developing one's character. So if one is just kind of bombarding one's senses at that age, then it's not the best training. So yeah, so you can see here they were situated in the renounced order from the very beginning of their lives. They controlled their activities and their senses, and thus became great saints. So anything's like that, right? Even like football players, like famous basketball players, they all started very young. So imagine that if we were taught this self-control from an early age. Okay, so going on. They concentrated their minds always upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the resting place of the totality of living entities and who is therefore celebrated as Vasudeva. Lord Vasudeva is the only shelter of those who are actually afraid of material existence. So this is nice. Yeah, Lord Vasudeva is the only shelter of those who are actually afraid of material existence. So we see, this word comes up, this kinchana, right? Meaning like one who has no other possessions other than the Lord. So we see, yeah, in some of Queen Kunti's prayers, we see her praying like this, that you are the property of those who are uh, niskinchana, who actually have nothing. Um, and the opposite of that is, as Prabhupada deems it, the fallible soldiers. So one may think, yeah, if I just, surround myself with all these nice amenities and a nice family, um, then things will be okay. Um, But in actuality, yeah, what can these things actually do? Um, like we saw, recently, that this earthquake in Turkey just killed so many people, right? And yeah, no matter if you had a huge house, small house, no matter how much family members you had, no, all of it's completely gone. But one who takes shelter of the Lord, as the Lord says, yeah, my devotee never perishes. Um, so the body may perish, but the actual one's one's spiritual progress, one's real self-interest, that then the Lord will protect. So in this way, um, and of course, yeah, in one of those purports also, Prabhupada of Queen Kunti, where this idea of a kinchana is brought up, and Prabhupada says, yeah, generally devotees have minimal possessions. They require just what they need. By constantly thinking of his lotus feet, these three sons of Maharaj Priyavrata became advanced in pure devotional service. So very nice meditation for us about how meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord uh, is what actually leads, yeah, is what actually purifies us. So um, nice in the Sri Ishopanishad, one of the verses that describes Krishna as the Papa Vidham, which means the supreme purifier. So yeah, contact with Krishna in any of his forms, name, quality, pastimes, all this is actually what has the ability to purify one. So we see this in the pastime where Haridas Thakur, he was approached by this prostitute, and because there was some, envious, I believe envious, you know, yeah, people in the village, and they were thinking, okay, this Haridas Thakur is getting so much name and fame, so let me ruin his reputation. So let me send a prostitute there. So she comes in, and then Haridas Thakur says, well, okay, yeah, I'll enjoy with you, but just first, just you know, I just have to finish my round, so just take a seat. I'll be done soon, um, and then we can engage. Um, so then, yeah, the prostitute's there, and what is she doing? She's listening to him chanting. So he's chanting, 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 and then just by that exposure to the holy name, of course, uttered by such a pure devotee, uh, she actually became she actually became purified, became a devotee, took shelter of him, and then he gave her instruction like, okay, go, build this little hut next to the Ganges, and worship Tulsi there, like that. So you could see, even though she came with this desire, um, by that contact with the Lord, then she became purified. So we have to remember, yeah, that the purifying agent in our life is this contact with Krishna, as um, um, as Krishna says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that Satatam Hare Krishna. But yeah, so he's saying that, I think it's in the second chapter, um, that by constantly worshiping the Lord with prayers, then the Lord who's situated within the heart, will actually cleanses one's heart within. Yeah, so that's the process. And Prabhupada says we have two types of cleanliness: external cleanliness, of course, taking a bath, all that kind of stuff, and then internal cleanliness. And that internal cleanliness comes by chanting Hare Krishna and constantly remembering the pastimes of the Lord. So we shouldn't forget it, that this is the purifying process. By the prowess of their devotional service, they could directly perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as the Supersoul, and realize that there was qualitatively no difference between themselves and Him. So there's a very nice line, and this one might think, oh, by the prowess of their devotional service. It sounds almost like one could take it like, yeah, by their prowess. So what are they, like, puffed up? But the prowess of devotional service um, means that one has the prowess of not thinking one has prowess, or one has the prowess in pleasing the senses of the Lord. So it's yeah, and then this is a very interesting point. And then they realized that there was qualitatively no difference between themselves and Him. So there's one verse in the 14th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 19. Nanyam gunebhya kartaram yada drastanupasyati gunebhyascha parambeti madbhavam sodigakchati. When one properly sees that in all activities there's no other performer, when one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord who is transcendental to all these modes, he attains my spiritual nature. Okay, so in other words, one can attain to the spiritual nature of the Lord if two things, as we learn from this purport, by seeing that only the material modes of nature are at work, and by knowing that the Lord is transcendental. So it's amazing, yeah. If you study this 14th chapter Bhagavad Gita, which is it always just baffles me, because right at the beginning of that chapter, Krishna is saying, "Okay, now I'm going to tell you the most important thing that you've thus heard." And as we all know, like, 14th chapter means that all these previous chapters are like jam-packed with Krishna Tattva, talking about Krishna's Rasaham Apsukonteya and attaining the Supreme. The 9th chapter is just direct knowledge about Krishna. But now Krishna is saying in the 14th chapter that now he's going to give knowledge that's superior to the other knowledge that he's given. Um, and it says that by being situated in this knowledge, so many great sages and saints have attained perfection. And what is that knowledge? The knowledge is of the three modes of material nature. So knowing these three modes is just like really having a very a firm grasp on, like, the nature of these modes uh, is apparently very paramount for understanding Krishna and being situated on the transcendental platform. Um, and yeah, Krishna says, by knowing these modes and knowing that the Lord is transcendental, then one can attain equality in qualitative equality. So of course we'll never be able to be quantitatively as great as the Lord, but qualitatively we can. And Prabhupada says in one of those 14th chapter purports that a servant must attain a certain qualification in order to be able to serve the king. So similarly, we also have to attain, we have to attain to the Brahmin platform before being able to serve the Lord. Okay, so that's the verse. So now reading through the purport here. The Paramahamsa stage is the topmost position in the renounced life. In sannyas, the renounced order, there are 4 stages: Kutichak, Bahudak, Parivrajakacara, and Paramahamsa. According to the Vedic system, when one accepts the renounced order, he stays outside his village in a cottage, and his necessities, especially his food, are supplied from home. This is called the Kutichak stage. When a sannyas advances further, he no longer accepts anything from home. Instead, he collects his necessities, especially his food, from many places. This system is called Madhukari, which literally means the profession of the bumblebees. As bumblebees collect honey from many flowers, a little from each, so a sannyasi should beg from door to door, but not accept very much food from any particular house. He should collect a little bit from every house. This is called the Bahudak stage. When a sannyas is still more experienced, he travels all over the world to preach the glories of Lord Vasudeva. He is then known as Parivrajakacarya. The sannyasi reaches the Paramahamsa stage when he finishes his preaching work and sits down in one place, strictly for the sake of advancing in spiritual life. In actuality, Paramahamsa is one who completely controls his senses and engages in unalloyed service, in the unalloyed service of the Lord. So that's a very important line there. An actual Paramahamsa is one who completely controls his senses and engages in the unalloyed service of the Lord. So we can, so that's interesting because it almost seems like contradictory to uh, the list of the order of, I guess, like superiority in these sannyas stages. There's Prabhupada saying, okay, well, that's nice. You can sit down in one place, but um, um, but the actual paramount stage is when no matter what you do, your senses are controlled and you're engaged in the unalloyed service of the Lord. So we see, we see this so often, especially, I guess if you go to India, you can see that like sometimes you'll come out of a holy place like a yoga pit, and you'll see like just a line of beggars and dressed like a renunciant and begging, and of course, some of them may be like real renunciants like this, um but oftentimes it seems that even though they're begging like this, but how much are they actually controlling their senses, devoting themselves to the Lord like this? So in other words, one can artificially renounce, but and that's great if one is if one is sincerely doing that. Okay, that's great. But more important thing is actually like what's the internal kind of state of that person? Are they really renounced? Are they really devoting everything to the Lord? Are they really controlling the senses? That's the real, as we hear Prabhupada saying, that's the real Paramahamsa stage. Therefore, so continuing. Therefore, all three of these sons of Priyavrata, namely Kavi, Mahavira, uh, and Savana, were situated in the Paramahamsa stage from the very beginning. Sorry, just on that last point, because we see, right, so many yogis, long hair, saffron cloth, but then what happens? They fall down. So how much, how much on the Paramahamsa stage were they actually? Yeah. Okay. So moving on. Therefore, all three of these sons of Priyavrata, namely Kavi, Mahavir, and Savana, were situated in the Paramahamsa stage. from the very beginning. Their senses could not disturb them, for their senses were completely engaged in serving the Lord. Therefore, the three brothers are described in this verse as upasama sila. Upasama means completely subdued. Because they completely subdued their senses, they are understood to have been great sages and saints. Um, so, yeah, we see, so, yeah, these kind of like generally this sannyas conception, like in in the Vedic times, this was this was standard, right? Especially for the brahmanas. Of course, they say like I believe this. I believe only the higher varnas are recommended to take sannyas. But yeah, generally sannyas was like vanaprastha. These things were just part of life. Um, um, so it didn't necessarily mean, yeah, because uh, if you were engaged in kind of like, say like mixed devotional service or, more like Karmakanda stuff throughout your life, then okay, the end of your life, yeah, you better take sannyas and then devote yourself to the Lord, right? But here we see that the these three sons, they were, as Prabhupada's saying, they were Paramahamsa from the very beginning, right? So um, there's so many. So we have examples like Prabhupada said, okay, our grihastas, they're actually better than sannyas because they're doing so much preaching work. And um, Prabhupada says, I can't remember right now what part of the Bhagavatam, but yeah, maybe in this fifth canto. Um, but in the purports describing about family life, Prabhupada's saying that okay, one doesn't have to renounce if if one's family is getting together and engaging in kirtan, um, offering their food like this. If your life is already fully dedicated to the service of the Lord, then yeah, there's no need like this to renounce. Of course, we can all individually make that self-assessment, how much we are devoted to the Lord. Um, but yeah, it's a nice point that the the devotees, they're already kind of on that transcendental platform. Yeah. Let's see. And yeah, they were okay. So let's see. So I want to at least make it through this purport before I finish my part of the class. So next paragraph. After subduing their senses, the three brothers. Okay, so now this is wonderful. Yeah, I mean, we're just hearing about these brothers. I just imagine such exalted personalities, just completely controlled and sense control from the very beginning of their lives. Obviously, they came from such high lineage. Um, and now let's read on about their glories here. After subduing their senses, the three brothers concentrated their minds upon the lotus feet of Vasudeva, Lord Krishna. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:19, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. The lotus feet of Vasudeva are everything. Lord Vasudeva is the reservoir of all living entities. When this cosmic manifestation is dissolved, all living entities enter the supreme body of the Lord, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who merges within the body of Mahavishnu. Both of these Vishnu tattvas are Vasudev tattvas, and therefore the great sages Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana concentrated always upon the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva, Krishna. In this way, they could understand that the supersoul within the heart is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they could realize their identity with Him. The complete description of this realization is that simply by discharging the unalloyed form of devotional service, one can realize his self completely. The Padma Bhakti Yoga mentioned in this verse means that a living entity, by dint of unalloyed devotional service, has no other interest than the service of the Lord, as described in Bhagavad Gita Vasudeva Savamiti. By Padma Bhakti Yoga, by elevating oneself to the highest platform of loving service, one can automatically be relieved from the bodily concept of life and see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, as confirmed in Brahma Samhita. Premanjana charita bhakti velochanena santa sadaiva hridayeshu velokayanti yam shama sundara machinta guna sarupam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. An advanced devotee who is known as Sat or Saint can always see within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Krishna, Shamasundar, expands himself by his plenary portion, and thus a devotee can always see him within his heart. Okay. All right. Yeah. So maybe I'll stop there. If any questions or comments, and yeah, questions or comments, anyone, please feel free to say something. Okay. So yeah, we see this point of sense control is brought up here. Um, so it's a nice, and we know like, yeah, this is a very important aspect of our lives as devotees, is the sense control. And Prabhupada says one should very strenuously try to control the senses. Um, um, yeah, and there are many examples like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being very pleased, being very pleased by the renunciation of the devotees, and uh, and in one statement even saying that one who runs here and there seeking to gratify his palate cannot know me, cannot know Krishna. So yeah, this idea of sense control is very important. And there's one purport where, let's see, I think I wrote it down. Yeah, let me just find it because it's like it's kind of striking. Chapter 4, the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, yeah. So this is nice, very nice verse, and very kind of in, um, surprising purport almost. So the translation is, a faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. So, yeah, faith in the dedication to transcendental knowledge, and subduing his senses. By these things, one is able to achieve such knowledge. The knowledge, of course, being transcendental, sublime knowledge, that's the mature fruit of all mysticism, as explained in the previous verse. Okay, then the purport, Prabhupada says, such knowledge in Krishna consciousness can be achieved by a faithful person who believes firmly in Krishna. One is called a faithful man who thinks that simply by acting in Krishna consciousness, he can attain the highest perfection. This faith is attained by the discharge of devotional service and by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, which cleanses one's hearts of all material dirt. Over and above this, one should control the senses. A person who is faithful to Krishna and who controls the senses can easily attain perfection in the knowledge of Krishna consciousness without delay. So I thought it was interesting because, yeah, it's purport starts out by glorifying, having faith and um, how one can increase one's faith by chanting the Maha Mantra. And then Prabhupada says, but over and above this, one should control the senses. So, very important to control the senses. And as we know, by fully engaging in the service of the Lord, then the senses become like the venomous serpents of the senses become like serpents with broken fangs. So not as scary and intimidating. And this is so the full samadhi program is the best way, easiest way to control the senses. And I remember one time when I was going out on books, and as I was leaving the van, then the Sankirtan leader he just yelled out. He said, "Okay, Dasa, do 40 books." And it was like kind of off day and in like a kind of obscure place. So I was like, "Oh my God, 40 books!" And the Sankirtan leader had never given a quota before. So I was like, "Oh my God, got to get this quota." So I was, just very determined to try to distribute these books. And I remember when I came back, to take a little snack, all I was thinking of was, man, I got to get these 40 books out. So what time did I have to just like eat extra? No, I was on a mission. Um, and I mean, I was just full, like we hear this Ekeha Kurunandana, this one-pointed attention. So somehow, by the mercy of this devotee, I had this one-pointed attention. I was so determined to reach my quota, and my point being, my senses were able to be controlled um, by this kind of um, engagement in a superior activity, and by that dedication. And what time does one have to gratify one's senses when one has a huge mission to accomplish? So that's why Prabhupada's described expert management means that constantly making people strive for a great challenge. That's great management. Okay. So last chance if anyone wants to contribute. If not, I will go finish up cooking breakfast. Okay, thank you very much, devotees, for your attendance. Sorry for the delays. Anta Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Prabhu, I
jai.
have a question, but I was
Okay,
typing it because I'm sitting at work.
okay.
But I'll probably go out. Uh, Thank you for the class. Um, I I joined a little late, but one question, and it may not be asked properly, so please excuse me for that. That you said that Prabhupada, you gave a good reference of Prabhupada saying that control of the senses is even like more vigilant. One has to be more vigilant than chanting Hare Krishna. What do you, how do we deal with that self? Because I think we criticize ourselves more than anyone else. If we fail to do this sometimes, let's say I eat outside a bagel or something, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that I wasn't supposed to do that. Um,
I don't know if it just cut out, if you were finished or it cut out, but I guess um your point was made clear. Yeah, how to
oh, I'm sorry, I got a phone call in the middle. How do we deal with oneself, like the self criticism? And because the mind can, okay, say, okay, now eat it, there's one time nothing is going to happen, and then when I do it, then it goes into another cycle of self judgment and self criticism. That, oh, you did it, oh, see, you're not following your vows, or you ate what was not offered to Krishna at home or in the temple. So how do you like practically apply this statement in your life? That, or how do we, or from, I want to hear your perspective because you have great perspectives. How do we like practically apply this in our life? This the instruction of Prabhupada that one has to be very vigilant, and when we are not vigilant sometimes. I don't know if I'm making sense. Am I?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so how do you um so maybe like how do you not get so down on yourself to where uh, yeah, you maybe like might feel depressed by kind of putting yourself down like that. Um yeah, I mean, that I guess that the high standard is there, but like as I heard one senior Prabhupada devotee, he was saying that he was saying, okay, what to do, you know? You you overate, you know, what can be done? Like just continue engaging in devotional service. Um so yeah, ultimately like as far as I've kind of like thought of and ever realized is that okay, like the process is so wonderful that just by hanging in there in the process, then this purification will happen. Um, of course, yeah, we shouldn't become complacent and just kind of like throwing the towel and just like that. But uh, I mean, if it happens, what to do? But definitely trying to control the senses is very important, and we should strive for this. And I like one statement Prabhupada says, for the neophyte, then uh, one, one should stay aloof from the objects of sense gratification. So I was just talking last night with someone and saying, you know, I know that if I stay downstairs for breakfast time, yeah, I'm just gonna eat like an extra more muffins than I need to. So because I because I know that about myself, then I'll just just eat somewhere else, and then easy, the senses are controlled. So we should kind of know where we're at and um, not put ourselves in these types of situations. So yeah, because it is. Anyways, I think it's kind of yeah, it is hard to control the senses. Um, um, but the bhakti process will purify these things, will purify this desire for the sense control. So we should put ourselves in situations where we're not tempted by the senses, knowing that just a matter of time before we become more and more controlled. Um, but of course, yeah, there I think yeah, many yeah, probably not the best one to ask because I know some devotees are just very controlled, very sense controlled, and that's glorious. And as we see, this verse I read, Prabhupada glorifies it so much. But anyways, I think there's so much psychology things about that also about yeah not getting down on oneself. So those are just some thoughts. Janavatsala, you had you're giving me a high five, or you had a question or comment?
I had a comment, but Sri Golok read a question in the chat first before me.
Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you for the class. What are your thoughts on multitasking? It's a skill needed these days, and it's skill sought after. You mentioned Karunandana, single pointed attention. So multitasking versus this Ekaha Kurunandana.
Yeah. Sorry, Prabhu. Real quick. You mentioned single pointed attention. It's it's a great skill to have. Focus, lacking the focus, and we get focus. But these days, multitasking is a huge asset. In many companies, and they get a lot more money. Than a specialist. So how do we draw this bridge? That what is better?
Well, we don't want to multitask. We don't want to multitask with Maya and Krishna. That's for sure. We don't want to. Yeah, I think that type of. If we become expert at multitasking, we shouldn't apply it to uh, having, Krishna and Maya both tasks being done at the same time. So, but I think it's wonderful. Yeah, if one has the capabilities, if one has kind of the Shakti to do many things for Krishna at the same time, then that's wonderful. Someone more simple, maybe they can be fully absorbed by just, doing one, sweeping the floor. Maybe that's a challenging enough task to where they can be fully absorbed in Krishna. Maybe someone needs to be like sweeping the floor and, coordinating others, how to clean, and listening to a lecture, and, thinking about, ways to reach Krishna consciousness like that. So I think multitasking, yeah, it's wonderful, and it's whatever will keep us more absorbed in Krishna, right? That's our kind of like our standard.
Nice, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yeah, but maybe this multitasking also is like, yeah, maybe when it comes to our japa, maybe sometimes it's these skill. If our whole day we're just like thinking about so many things, then that might also come when we start trying to chant japa. Okay, Janavatsala.
It's so glorious to get a chance to think of Krishna in this sangha. And I was just thinking of this verse 1857 in Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, Chetas sarva karmani mai sanyasya mat paraha buddhi yoga mupashritya machita satatam bhava. And all activities just depend upon me and work always under my protection. And such devotional service be fully conscious of me. So that's just a beautiful verse to keep close. We can always depend on Krishna and be close to him. And in regard to the one pointed attention, I wanted to share this other awesome verse in that regard, which is Bhagavatam 1:2-14. Tasmadekena manasa bhavan satam patihi shotavya kirtivyascha dhyaya pugyascha nityada. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. I first heard this Bhagavatam verse from Gauranga Darshan Prabhu. He has very nice segments called Nectar Verses on Hare Krishna TV. And so I love the discussion about multitasking, and this verse is kind of like you said, it's just talking about one fixed attention while you're doing that spiritual activity. Which one was the verse that you quoted? Where is that found? The Ekahi Kunandana?
I couldn't. I believe second chapter. Yeah, it's somewhere in the second chapter. I want to say the middle.
Thank you. Look that up.
Somewhere in the
Thank you,
middle.
Haribol.
Haribol, thank you for sharing nectar shlokas. I know Vaisheshika Guru, he gives instructions to some of his disciples to collect slokas like a miser collects coins. So collecting these kind of nectar verses. Okay, so Kaylee has made a comment. Just a comment on Prem Kishori's question. Always try to think of what advice I would give someone else who is doing these things. We tend to be quite understanding with others who are sincerely trying, and we don't hold things against them or look down on them. So Krishna, who is a big number times million, let's say, times more merciful than us, would be much more understanding. But as long as we are sincerely trying, not just doing whatever we want and not caring. Oh my God. Okay. Sorry, Krishna. Okay. Can anyone finish that? My chat box just freaked out. All right. It's giving me all sorts of ads now.
Hi Krishna, yeah, I was just saying that this is something that works for me is just trying to put like what kind of advice would we give someone else? Like try to take our own advice, right? So when this doesn't always work in the case of we should be strict with ourselves and lenient with others, but sometimes if we're being sincere in our endeavors, then we could, be a little bit more understanding with ourselves. Krishna's like 1 billion times more merciful, so he's quite understanding as long as because he understands our motivation behind things. So yeah, just a quick comment on that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I was hoping someone would come up with one of these comments to that question. Okay. So I think they're trying to start group puja now. Thank you so much, everyone. So enlivening to see everyone's names on the screens at least, and yeah, just wonderful to have this association. Granta Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki